Hi, my name is Amanda James. I'm the Executive Director of the Georgia Gerontology Society. Today, we put together a presentation to help you with learning how to better deliver virtual presentations. Unfortunately, we are not going to be able to meet in person for our 65th annual conference, which we're very disappointed with, but we are excited that we're going to be bringing you quality education through webinars in the months of August and September, actually ending on October 1st. So this presentation is to help our presenters who may not be as comfortable with presenting virtually with some tips and suggestions on how they might be able to do that a little better and become a little more comfortable. I'd like to say thank you to the Southern Gerontological Society, specifically Dr. Jennifer Kraft Morgan with Georgia State University's Gerontology Institute and Celeste Green with Life Active. They put together a similar presentation with SGS. We've actually used a lot of their content for this presentation as well. So a thank you to them for being willing to share that information with us. I'm going to be turning off my video so that we can concentrate on the slides, but also because I have some notes and it could be a bit distracting if I'm looking down. We're going to be talking about audio and video later in the presentation, and so it's up to the presenter whether or not you want to keep your video going the whole time to help be more engaging, to be making eye contact, or whether you feel like it would be distracting. Since I know that I will have notes that I'll be referring to, I'm choosing to turn it off so that you don't see me do this the whole time. So the purpose of today's presentation is to give you tools and tips to be successful virtual presenters. Some of you may be very familiar with this because you've done it quite often, and that's wonderful. But for several people, this is the first time that they've had to adapt to presenting material virtually. And it is very different than presenting a material to a group of people where you can get feedback from your audience and where you can kind of see where you might need to speed up or slow down. So we're hoping this might help make it a little easier for you. We want to provide some information on what support you might need to be successful and give a brief overview of our virtual conference. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is helping listeners remain engaged. We want to try to make our presentations as interactive as possible. Our attention spans don't last very long in a normal presentation, and even less so in a virtual one. So we need to make sure our message is honed. Make sure the purpose of the presentation is clear. Share personal connections or stories that might make your presentation more interesting, and think about ways that you can make it more interactive with polls, utilizing the chat function, taking breaks, using video clips, etc. Today's presentation is being pre-recorded, so I don't have the benefit of an audience to be interactive with via chat functions or polls. And so that does make things a bit more difficult. But for our conference participants, we hope that you'll engage with our presenters as well so that it can be interactive for both audience and presenter. So the first thing we're going to talk about in terms of making things interactive is project focus. What is the purpose of your presentation? Make sure that that's evident and remains the focus throughout your presentation. Focus on what's new, what's most important, what's unique about your point of view, especially if this is a topic that people may have heard a lot about already. What makes your presentation different than the others they've heard? What new information are you bringing to the table? It can also be helpful to provide attendees with an overview, such as I did at the beginning of these are the things we're going to talk about. And you can reference it throughout so listeners know where you're going, and it helps them keep track of what's been discussed already and what's coming. Use visuals for interest and engagement. So one thing that's really helpful is to limit the amount of words on your slide and use a photo to help drive that point home. These are a couple of websites that have free artwork that you can use. All of the pictures that I use throughout this presentation are from these websites. And as you can see, it's not cheap looking clip art that's free, but actual fun and engaging real photography that you can use. These are just some of those free resources. You may know of others, but there's no need to pay for these pictures for your presentation if you don't already have those accounts. It can be really easy to find some really good examples to add an example to your presentation on what you're trying to say. It helps keep your listeners engaged. It helps make a connection to the material, and people might remember photos over the words. So during the Southern Gerontological Society presentation on the same topic, they conducted a poll with their listeners on some of the things that make people dread listening to presentations online. And some of the things that came out of that poll were if the presenter sounds worried or nervous, feeling disconnected from the presenter because you can't see them and they can't see you, too many words on the slide, if the presenter has a monotone voice or is just going on and on and on, if there are interruptions, so if the dog comes in, it can be cute, but it can also be very frustrating if things like that happen a lot or distract from the point of the presentation. Inability to ask questions if the presenter isn't interesting or if there's no opportunities for interaction. We highly encourage you to look for those opportunities wherever you can, and we'll talk as we go on about some additional ways you could do that. Most people naturally rush when doing a webinar because you don't have that audience feedback. You have to make a conscious effort to slow down and think about where you're going to take those pauses to try to keep yourself from going too quickly. We would like to offer you the opportunity to do a practice run and record yourself if that's something that would be helpful for you. It provides an opportunity for you to listen and see if there are speech stallers that you use, like or okay, or does that make sense? It helps you look at your talking speed and any other corrections you might make. We're not saying you have to be perfect. As you've already heard me in this presentation, there have been times that I might have rushed and I've had to slow down, or I've said things like, and that can be okay. It sounds more conversational. It sounds like somebody talking to you. But if you do that a lot, it can be quite distracting and take away from the topic that you're doing. So again, if you would like to do a practice run so that you can see how long it takes, check and see how you sound with your audio and visual and what you look like, which we'll talk about later, feel free to email me at administrator@georgiagerontologysociety.org, and we can set that up for you. It helps your audience as well as you to feel better if you look your best in your video. Now, we've all been in quarantine. Some of us haven't had haircuts or other beauty treatments that we might rely on, and you might not feel your best. And that's okay. We're not expecting you to look like, someone on TV or a model, but it does help you feel more confident if you look your best. And so I'm not necessarily talking about makeup and hair and clothing and that sort of thing, but some tips on how you might position your camera or extra steps you can take if you'd like to do a little bit more. So some of the things on this slide talking about lighting, for many of us, we're not necessarily going to have extra lights. This website on the bottom of this slide was provided by Celeste Green in the SGS presentation and have some information for you on some kits that can help with that. She uses 2 lights at 45-degree angles just above the eye level for that extra pop. But for some of us, we may not have that or an interest in that, in which case using natural lighting by being near a window, facing the light, looking for those tips so that you don't have a distracting background. As you notice, and I'll bring my video back up for this point. As you might notice in my video, I don't have a very exciting background. It's just a blank wall. I am sitting by a window. You can't see it, but it's to my left. So I do have some natural light to help with that. I chose this background so that you wouldn't be distracted by other things in my house, and because I don't really have another good setup. Not all of us have a dedicated office space that provides good light. My office space is actually pretty dark and I have to use artificial light, so it's not the best for this kind of presentation. I do have my computer lifted up a little bit so that the camera is more at eye level with me and not looking at me from below pointing up, which isn't a very flattering viewpoint. And so those are just some things to think about. But again, if you know you're going to be doing a lot of webinars, if you want to make an investment in looking a little bit more professional, because this is something that's going to be important for your career moving forward, there are some very low cost options that can add a little bit extra for you. We're not requiring that by any means or suggesting you have to do that to participate in this conference, but just sharing these tips in case that's something that you might be interested in doing. For audio strategies, it is important to try and be conversational when you can help it, to not just be reading from slides or sounding like you're giving kind of a pre-written speech, but allow to have a little bit of back and forth. I have notes, as I mentioned earlier, but I'm not reading exactly from them. They're just to help me make sure that I don't completely lose my place. If you've practiced and you're comfortable with your material, it's going to come across more conversational. Do your best to provide a clean start and stop on your slides. This helps keep you from rushing. It also helps the audience digest what you just said. And if you do have to go back in and edit, if you're going to use this for another project after the fact, it gives you those spaces to be able to edit certain slides in and out. It's helpful to use a headset or an external microphone with a headset. I don't know if you noticed, and again, I'll bring my video back. I have a microphone that I'm using. Again, not everybody's going to have that, and it's just a cheap microphone that I had because my dad and I like to sing and make CDs together at our own time. But it's just a cheap little USB microphone that I had bought that I started using when we did this, and I've got a headset in. Other people I've seen have been using gaming headsets or other things. It just helps so that there's not any distracting audio. Again, my audio today isn't the best audio that's out there, but I'm doing my best to try to hone it in a little bit so that you don't hear any background noises. Also, do your best to try to reduce interruptions. Those of you who know me know that I recently had a baby. Baby is upstairs with Nana right now to try to avoid that background noise of a baby crying. My other daughter is with grandma and her dad doing a little visit. So this was a good time to record. Taking those extra steps to try to avoid the opportunities for interruptions can go a long way for. And I see I just had a technical difficulty. My microphone fell off and then it started my video again. And those things happen and we roll with the punches. But as I was saying, taking the time to reduce those interruptions can be very important to the quality of your presentation. I want to end this little section by saying again, We are not requiring you to go out and buy anything that you don't have, just to utilize what you might have to make things the best experience that they can be. But if you don't have additional lighting or you don't have an external headset or microphone, we are a forgiving group of people within GGS and our aging network. We understand we're all in this together. These are just some suggestions so that you feel more confident and comfortable. We're very excited about our 2020 GGS virtual conference. Every Tuesday and Thursday, starting August 8th through October 1st, we're going to be doing presentations. We will have 1-hour sessions from 11:30 to 12:30, with the exception of 2 keynote sessions, which will open us up on August 4th and end us out on October 1st. Those will be 1.5 hours, and those we are applying for social work CEUs. We're planning a separate award ceremony and annual meeting, and more information will come out about those. Our conference is going to be free for GGS members as a thank you for supporting us and a celebration of our 65th anniversary. We know that you are all working so hard to help keep Georgians safe during this pandemic, and we want to thank you and provide an opportunity for you to get quality education at a time when finances might be tight. We are providing a low price of $75 for non-members and $30 for students, retirees, and presenters. There is a $10 CEU processing fee. I do want to point out, for those of you who might be non-members and are viewing this presentation, our membership rate for professionals is $60, and for students and retirees, it's $25. So we highly encourage you to consider becoming a member. Then you would have free access to the annual conference as well as the other membership benefits. By registering for the conference, you get access to the live events as well as the recordings. For our presenters, this means that you may not have a large number of people on the actual call itself, and we know that can be unfortunate. However, we feel strongly that during these difficult times, we need to provide flexibility to people, and having to watch live 2 times a week over 2 months would be a lot for someone to have to do. So we want to make sure that they can participate live in the ones that are of the most interest to them, and then perhaps listen back to others as time permits. We will do our best, though, to be interactive with the number that we have, whether that's 2 or 20 or 200. So we encourage you to think about ways to be interactive, whether that's through, again, the chat, polling, videos, photos, anything that you can do to kind of make things more exciting. Thank you for listening to this short presentation. I'm going to start my video back up so that I can say goodbye to you all. And I would encourage all of you to use the video at least in the beginning to say hello to everybody and let them see you and engage with you. And again, at the end, if you have questions, if you're not comfortable having it on you the whole time. If you do have any questions about any of this, feel free to email me at administrator@georgiagerontologysociety.org. Again, I thank you for joining me, and I hope this was helpful, and I look forward to virtually seeing all of you during our 2020 virtual conference. Thank you so much, and see you soon.